is your Classic Metal Show right here on theclassicmetalshow.com, and that is brand new stuff from Edenbridge, from the album The Great Momentum. That is The Die Is Not Cast. And the guy that's here to cast the die for us, though, it's the guitarist of Edenbridge. It is Lanvall. Lanvall, how are you, man?
Hi, Chris. I'm fine. I'm calling from Austria, and greeting all listeners of the Classic Metal Radio Show.
Excellent, man. Well, I got to tell you right off the bat, man, this record, The Great Momentum, it is as grand as ever from Edenbridge. It is, maybe the biggest sounding, most epic material you've done to date.
Yes, I would agree. I think it's our most bombastic album, our most heaviest, I would say. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty happy with the album because it charted in 4 of the biggest markets in the world. In Germany, Switzerland, UK, and also America on the Billboard hard music charts. Sure. So I think we've done quite a lot of things right on this album, which makes me very happy, of course.
Sure. Now, when you start getting worldwide airplay like that, like you are now, does that put more pressure on you as a band to kind of replicate the success each time out?
No, I think this is the successful formula we have because I never make up my mind in advance about success or about radio friendly things. If you always are in a flow and if you always let your heart come out in the songs, I think then the right things are coming out. It would be silly to replicate a successful formula maybe of older albums. And do that on the new one too, because I don't want to repeat myself. It's always to heading for new frontiers with each and every album, and I think this is the most important thing to keep the sound fresh and explore new territories.
Sure. Well, you're definitely doing that here. Now, I'm curious with when you write music, specifically, not necessarily only you, but obviously you can only speak for Edenbridge. How do you balance the orchestral parts from the metal parts? Because that's such a, outsider looking in, that looks like that would be a hard meshing to do. But bands like yourself or Nightwish or what have you have found the way to do that almost seamlessly to where it absolutely works.
I think this is a very interesting question because I think you have to have a lot of knowledge in arranging, and you have to have knowledge on the one hand setting up an orchestra and scoring for an orchestra, which in Nightwish cases they have an external arranger, and I'm able to do it on my own. And you have to have knowledge, of course, of the metal thing. And I think the most important thing is to keep the dynamics of both sides. If you have the orchestra always playing and always bombastic, it doesn't give you the impression that it's still bombastic anymore. And if you don't give the guitars room and overdo it with an orchestra, it's pretty much the same because you're losing the heaviness. So you have to, if the orchestra is playing, it's in our case it's always a blast, or most of the time it's a blast, and then of course the guitars have to go back. And if you want to have heavy guitars, you cannot put in some orchestra. So I think this is the critical balance to set up for making a record sound like it is in our case, I would say.
Sure. Now, as the guitarist, do you ever come in with riffs that you really like, but then as you start to put it together, you're like, nah, that's not going to work because of the orchestral pieces?
I think sometimes I adapt the riffs a bit because most of the time the orchestra is built upon a riff, which is interesting because you're having new ideas and you're getting a new insight of what you can do with an orchestra if you put it up on top of a guitar riff. But sometimes the riff is changing a bit because then I have new ideas for the orchestra, and then sometimes I have to adapt the guitars a bit. But that's an interesting combination, and I do that quite often. Like in songs of Shiantara, where the first orchestra part is coming in, this was first the guitar riff and then the orchestra, and then there are a couple of parts where it is like this.
Sure. Now you mentioned the She and Tara song, and I wanted to ask you about that. What is the genesis behind that song? Because that's one of the most interesting songs, and certainly probably the most lyrically appealing as well.
Yeah, I'm a big Star Trek fan, as some people might know, because I took Star Trek, especially Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. I also wrote a lot of lyrics in the past about it. And She and Tara is dealing with one episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Okay. It's mainly a ritual about a race called the Trill, which is a symbiotic life form. But I don't want to go too much into detail. Don't want to bore all the listeners with some details of this episode. But it's an interesting episode, so you have to watch it. The only thing I did, the word She and Tara is spelled a bit differently in the original. It's spelled with a Z and an H, and I abbreviated a bit and took an S instead of a Z to make it sound a bit better and also to look a bit better. This is the only difference.
Sure. Now, Lanvall, on the new release, you do have a new drummer. What happened to Max, and how does Johannes come into the band?
Well, Max told us at one point last year that he didn't want to. He has no intention for drumming anymore. Not just in the band, but in general. He had a new job at that time and a new situation in his family, and therefore, we couldn't do anything. I asked him if he still wanted to record the album, but neither this he wanted to do. Okay. So we had to accept that, and my first contact was Johannes, because he played in another band with our guitar player Dominic. So he was the first one to ask. He's also from our neighborhood, surrounding in the same city, and we met. He listened to the songs. He liked them very much. And first, he was a bit unsure if he can afford the time to be a full-time member in Edenbridge. So at first, he just wanted to record the album. But then we asked him steadily, what is your plan now? And finally, in August last year, he said, I'm part of the band, and that was great because he's a 3D graphic designer, and he also did the parts of the album cover. Together with Anthony Clarkson, and then did the whole booklet design and everything. So it's simply brilliant to have him in the band.
Sure. Now, is it more difficult to work in a new musician in a band like Edenbridge that does fuse both metal and orchestra than it might be in just a traditional metal band, because you can't just lay down a 4/4 beat as an example. You really have to. Everything is a little more thought out in the mix. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. But in Johannes' case, it's Edenbridge is quite slow for him, because he's coming from the technical death metal side, and if you give him some blast beats at 230 or 50 beats per minute, it's nothing for him. So therefore, he recorded the album in 9 hours, which is pretty amazing. Wow. So not a big deal for him.
Sure, definitely. Now, Lanvall, the first single is the song "The Moment Is Now," and in my ears, it's the perfect representation of what Edenbridge is. Talk a little bit about that song and why it was chosen as the first single.
Well, actually, it is the second single, because the first single was She and Tara, which was originally released as a download single in December. And The Moment Is Now will be released on the 17th of March, because there is a big club promotion activity in Germany to maybe bring it to the alternative charts. And for The Moment Is Now, we did the video. So you're not wrong when you say it's the first single, because the video song is normally represents the single of the album.
Sure.
Well, in our case, it's always the point that I have one idea per album from my stream on, which is one song that is a bit more of the commercial side, which is very catchy tune, and which represents a bit I wouldn't say the pop side of the band, but I think it's a kind of pop metal song. I wouldn't say that it represents Edenbridge so well, because what is really represents Edenbridge well is most of the time the long tracks, like The Greatest Gift of All on the new album, because this is where all the different elements what the band is about are in.
Okay.
But I think The Moment Is Now I think it's a nice song, and I think the video was done very well, because we tried to do something new. And I think it's if somebody is not familiar with the band, I think it's a good song to get familiar with the band. So I think this is the story behind.
Sure. Now, I personally have not had the chance to see your band perform live. I'm curious if you have to rearrange the songs a little bit on the concert stage versus the studio recordings.
Not really, because of course we have to play with backings, which come from our laptop, the orchestra, some keyboard parts. I play both guitar and piano. So when there are some leading piano parts, I try to play them live, of course. Normally we stick to the studio version. Sometimes we have to leave some parts, and we cannot play everything. Also in the guitars, of course. But the guitars most of the time are arranged that we can play it with two guitars, of course. And yeah, you should have come to the 70,000 Tons of Metal cruise, because then you would have seen us play.
Well, maybe you guys will play another cruise or some stateside shows soon enough.
Hopefully again.
Certainly. Well, if I really want to go see you, I guess I could go to Saigon at some point this year to see when you're shooting the DVD. Talk a little bit about that and why you chose Saigon of all places to film a DVD.
No, I think you have some wrong information. We haven't chosen to film a DVD there. Maybe there was some wrong information from some promo agency or something. Okay. Initially, it was planned to go to Vietnam this year, but unfortunately, it was not happening, because Vietnam is always a problem with the government approvals, and I don't know what happened this year, because we have played in Vietnam in the past. We did an acoustic show in 2010, so I don't know. Did the state government, didn't they give any money to the promoter? I have no idea what happened. So sure. It's a pity, because it would have been nice, and right at the moment we would have been there in Vietnam according to the actual plans. But unfortunately, maybe later in this year, maybe next year, I have no idea.
Sure. Now, are there? I'm going to assume there are other touring plans though for the year.
Yeah, we have just confirmed an exclusive UK show for August, and we're working on several other shows, of course, but nothing confirmed yet. So we did the 70,000 Tons cruise and 2 home shows in Austria, which went very fine, and we have to see which is coming along the way this year. Sure.
Well, for now, people can lock themselves into getting the new release, which is called The Great Momentum. It is Edenbridge. And Lanvall, as a tradition on the show, we always let the artist pick a closing track from the new album and maybe tell us a story about it. So what would you like us to end the interview with?
How much time do you have?
I have as much time as you'd like to use.
Okay, then I would say let's play. Maybe it's better to choose Return to Grace, because if it's called the Classic Metal Show, I think it's a classic metal track with some Oriental influences and a bombastic and fast chorus. So I would say Return to Grace is a good choice. Right. It's our heaviest track, I would say, of the album, and the fastest one. So I think this is fine.
All right, well, let's play it right now. It is Return to Grace. It is Edenbridge right here on your Classic Metal Show.